Hello, and welcome to this IBM webcast. I'm your moderator, Kimberly Gist. Complexity is the biggest challenge faced by companies looking to deliver innovative applications, products, and solutions while managing costs. As a result, taking an integrated approach to application lifecycle management, or ALM, that includes design management can make a big difference. Today, Don Yantzi, IBM Collaborative Design Management, and Cindy VanEpps, IBM's Strategic Industry Solutions Lead for Rational Software, will share how focusing design while also adopting 5 imperatives for effective ALM can help you manage complexity, improve quality, reduce costs, and increase collaboration across the entire team. Don Yantzi is a product line manager for Rational Software Architect and Collaborative Design Management at IBM. Over the past year, Don has been focused on improving software and system design collaboration and lifecycle integration. Don has worked in many different roles during his career, including testing, development, and as a technical lead. Cindy VanEpps has a wide range and over 25 years of experience in software development as a developer, technical lead, project manager, requirements engineer, product development manager, trainer, and consultant. She is currently leading several initiatives that tie together different rational tools to support specific scenarios that target industry or other specialized needs. Don and Cindy, thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to your presentation, the video demonstration, and the opportunity to ask some key questions later on in the event. Don, I'll turn it over to you first so that we can get started. Don?
Thanks, Kimberly. So in the webcast, Cindy and I are going to take a look at these 3 things here. I'll start with a look at what is collaborative design management. It's something fairly new that we've come out with, and take a look at how it relates to software and systems architecture, modeling, and design tools, which have been in the market for a lot longer. Then Cindy's going to take a look at the 5 ALM imperatives with a specific focus on how design integrates with those and complements the imperatives. And then we'll finish off with a demo showing 3 aspects of the imperatives with a focus again on design. And of course, as we go through here, I would encourage you, if you have a question, if you think of a question, go down into the Q&A tab and enter it in there now, or as we go through the presentation, so you don't get to the end and forget that key question, because we do plan to have some time left over at the end to go in and do some Q&A. So let's take a look first at what is collaborative design management. Collaborative design management is an ALM and software and systems lifecycle capability that incorporates design into the lifecycle. And by design, what I really mean here is a generic, we're using design in a generic sense to represent software architecture, systems design, software design, more traditional terminology around things like modeling. And collaborative design management integrates that into the overall lifecycle. And in June of last year, we came out with a project out on jazz.net that introduced the design management into the Jazz platform as a way of representing software architectures, models, any type of software and system design as a first-class artifact in the overall lifecycle. In much the same way that we have requirements management as part of the lifecycle, quality management, change and configuration management. We now have design management as a key part of the overall lifecycle. Now, at the same time, we have Rational Software Architect, we have Rational Rhapsody, which are IBM Rational's industry-leading IT and systems design solutions. And the idea here is really to complement those offerings with design management, to integrate RSA, Rational Software Architect, and Rhapsody more closely into the overall lifecycle and represent design as a key aspect of that lifecycle. So we've added the collaborative design management capabilities to both the Rational Software Architect and the Rational Rhapsody product families to connect them to Jazz and integrate design into the overall lifecycle. So what do I mean by integrating design into Jazz and the overall lifecycle? I already talked about representing design artifacts as a key artifact on the JAS platform in much the same way that we have requirements, change requests, and quality artifacts represented on the JAS platform as first-class artifacts. And what that means is they can be accessed by extended team members, stakeholders, subject matter experts through a web client. And this is one of the key things with RSA and Rhapsody, which have traditionally been a desktop tool and require somebody to have that tool installed in order to view the architecture or design. Now anybody can get access to those through a web client, and that enables further things like collaboration, being able to view and search through the architectures and designs, being able to go in and collaborate with the architects and engineers on those designs. It also enables things like traceability based on the open services for lifecycle collaboration, the OSLC specifications, allowing designs to be linked to other lifecycle artifacts for things like traceability and governance, but also just for discoverability. And Cindy's going to talk a lot more about that later on in the presentation. And just to look at application lifecycle management from both an IT and systems viewpoint. Rational has worked with a lot of clients, and through that have identified some fairly common adoption patterns for ALM solutions, both within the IT and systems space, but even within specific domains within those, and has used that experience working with clients to put together a configuration of typical adoption patterns for products that implement the ALM solution, as well as best practices and process governance to pull it all together. And what you see on this slide is a typical adoption pattern in the IT space. You'll see all the standard capabilities, requirements management, quality management, again, design management, software configuration, and change management. And underneath that, the corresponding products that provide that capability, such as Rational Requirements Composer, Rational Quality Manager, Rational Team Concert. And of course, the new thing in the focus of this presentation on the right-hand side there is Rational Software Architect with the integrated design management capability. And on the next slide, a slightly different viewpoint into this from a systems and software engineering perspective. Again, the same capabilities, but again, back to the typical adoption patterns that we see working with clients in the systems and software engineering space. The requirements management capability is often implemented through Rational Doors, and the architecture and design capability implemented through Rhapsody with, again, the integrated design management capability. And of course, there's different best practices and process guidance in the systems and software engineering space compared to the IT space. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy now to take a look at the 5 ALM imperatives with, again, a focus on how design complements and enhances those imperatives.
Thank you, Don. Maybe you've seen these 5 imperatives for effective application lifecycle management before. This is a representation of how teams with automated ALM have evolved beyond the traditional requirements, design, implementation, test phases, and even iterative development concepts to become high-performing teams. If you've seen these, it's most likely it was in the context of ALM before we formally added design management. So let's take a quick tour through these with an emphasis on how design management supports them. After that, Don will show you a demonstration of these imperatives in action with design management. Let's start with in-context collaboration. In addition to these kinds of collaboration challenges, a challenge particular to design management in the past has been that the design was hidden away in a secret place that required the architect's secret decoder ring to find and understand. Don characterized it as being on the architect's desktop tool. With design management in ALM, the designs are readily available to all team members through the web interface, as Don said, and the team can communicate on designs in a way that's most intuitive to them. So here's an example. On the far left, you can see the conversation and communication right in the place in the design where the conversation and comments are relevant. People can mark up and comment without being certified in the notational language of the design. So discussions on design are as comfortable and natural as on any other artifacts in the system. On the bottom right, an architect or developer can see his or her work of the project in the context of everything else going on in the project, and the view into these items is available from within the tools that the architect or designer is using, for instance, the desktop tool, in this case, Rational Software Architect. And designs, just like requirements, tasks, etc., can be reviewed and approved as part of the collaboration built in. The extent to which you require designs and approval of them is determined by the level of formality of your project. And here's Rich Hover. It's a superhero name if I ever heard of one. And now Rich also provides the graphical representation of an artifact where it's appropriate. A key specialization of collaboration is integrated planning. How many of you have spent hours, even days, in detailed planning only to have the plan require changes as soon as you start to enact it? So real-time planning is a reality-based means of directing a project with a plan while still being resilient to changes. This is not a facade for wheel spinning on a project, but rather a means of getting traction based on what you encounter on the road, so to speak. Let's see what it means for design management. In this Agile project, we see the integration of the design and implementation tasks under a single story. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead in my notes. In this slide, what we're showing is different functional teams with their plans integrated under a single plan that is used to direct the whole team. In the past, different functional teams maintained separate plans, and when a change happened in one area or discipline, the impact to others was usually discovered by accident. Real-time planning with team plans linked to the common goal plan supports better team cohesion and now includes the designers. So here we're showing this Agile team, as I was starting to say earlier, where the designer and implementation tasks are under a single story. So now if the story is changed, that is, for instance, moved to another sprint or iteration, the team members' work with their dependencies can easily be adjusted accordingly. And here we're just emphasizing those dependencies. And the traditional way of measuring progress using task accomplishment is now augmented with a better measurement of progress, and that is the completion of generated artifacts, including, of course, builds of users' capabilities. And speaking of artifacts, why do we build all of those things? Well, of course, because they reinforce and aid in the creation of the final product. But silos in the organization cost extra time and extra money. We know that silos cost, and visibility saves. Here we see the various roles and why they care about visibility into what the other roles are producing. So lifecycle traceability is not just about connecting dots and connecting dots because a process says we should. It's about providing links that answer essential questions such as these. From CMMI to DODAF to almost every mandate or guideline on software goodness, the ability to connect artifacts from one discipline to another is fundamental. And it's been this way since, well, the early 80s. Now, we're not suggesting that every requirement must have an associated design, but in some environments, like the system that guides the airplanes you fly in, wouldn't you want the highest level of rigor needed to ensure a safe environment? For other systems, like maybe the applications you build, the degree to which all elements should be required is determined by your industry mandates or internal assessment of risk versus cost. In this example, we see the different artifacts traced to each other, including the design elements. Now, for some of the elements, we have designs captured and traced, and for others, we do not. And we can determine, based on this traceability view, what gaps need to be filled. So the key here is the whole team. It's critical that the team members are working toward the same goal. Visibility into the artifacts is essential to supporting this concept. Look at the second bullet over there. The whole team buy-in improves team trust, efficiency, and focus. You know, the team wants to ensure what the architect is building and describing fits in with what they are specifying, for instance, in requirements or test cases. And where things are unclear, including why are we building this? Is this helping us? It's fair game for the team to evaluate and determine so that they can build the trust and efficiency and focus. Now, these last two imperatives that we'll talk about, the development intelligence and the improvements, are key to distinguishing ordinary development teams from exceptional teams. The first one we call development intelligence. You know, I correlate this to you standing on the doctor's scale, or it's that blasted blood pressure gauge or cholesterol screening that validates or refutes how you feel about something. It's the reality check, and here it's the reality check for development teams. So how are you really performing? Now, I'm terminally optimistic, and I know people who are painfully pessimistic. You know, personality affects what we perceive and how we take action. But isn't it the realists who are truly most effective? Objective measurement of reality is a key differentiator of software development teams. And these statistics from Capers-Jones that correlate project success to objective measurement reinforces that. So here's a set of dashboard widgets in the Application Lifecycle Management solution. You can see here that there's different representations of the data, for instance, things that help us steer the project, who help us understand the current state of the project, and things where we might want to improve. Now, how might you use similar dashboard widgets to represent the project and project aspects from the perspective of design? Well, you know, I personally would want to know which components have the highest defect density, for example. I'd want to know which requirements have the most churn. And are we representing those things with designs? Is there a correlation between what we've designed and how well the team understands it and implements it? This is the kind of development intelligence I would build into my ALM solution. And then what are we going to do with that knowledge? We need to react and adjust based on that knowledge. We have to put all that knowledge into action. This is really the definition of project maturity. So let's go back to our defect density per component. How might you adjust the team activities based on that knowledge? We might, for instance, shift the modeling effort to a specific part of the system. You know, we don't necessarily want to do design and modeling just for the sake of process. Most teams that I work with pick and choose the parts of the system that they will model and to the level of detail to which they will take that modeling. So we want to do agile and pragmatic modeling, and we can do that based on our understanding with the development intelligence to help make the decisions and steer the team to putting the modeling effort toward the right emphasis. For example, here's a team retrospective. And team retrospectives help the team identify areas of improvement, not in their silos, but collectively as a team. And if we look at some of the comments here, I hope that's not too small, where you can see at the bottom that this conversation is about the fact that there are some requirements that weren't well understood, and that there was a lot of rework and churn based on that. And in this conversation, Tanush, the tester, the test expert on the team, has indicated that he hopes that the team can find a way to do a better job of communicating on these. So from a design management perspective, certainly Al would want to, as the architect, would jump in and say, let's perhaps do more business process modeling or more high-level design modeling of these requirements to make sure that we understand them clearly as a team before we start to implement them. And so as we work through this suggestion in the next iteration, we'll use the combination of development intelligence and continuous improvement to make sure that we're putting our design and modeling effort toward the right efforts. Now, with that introduction in hand, Don is going to take you through some very specific examples of how these imperatives can be demonstrated with design management. Don?
Thanks, Cindy. And for the demo, a couple things. One of them is we're going to be using Rational Software Architect as the design tool, and of course integrate it with the Lifecycle through the design management capability. But as I mentioned earlier, Rational has our Rational Software Architect as well as Rational Rhapsody. So for those viewers that are using Rational Rhapsody or in the system space and evaluating software or systems design and modeling tools and looking at Rhapsody, the demo, what I show in the demo applies equally to Rhapsody. And in fact, through the web client, which most of the demo will use, it's very similar. The underlying diagram might look different if it was generated from RSA versus Rhapsody, but the capabilities are all the same. And there is a part of the demo where I'll show the viewpoint from within the desktop tool, within Rational Software Architect desktop tool, and just to be aware that similar capabilities exist from within the Rhapsody desktop tool. Now for the demo, we'll take a look at three parts of the ALM imperatives. We'll start off with a look at the traceability aspect and being able to link designs to other artifacts in the life cycle and using those links in meaningful ways throughout the development process, the software development life cycle. In the second part, we'll take a brief look at integrating the design into the planning capability like Cindy talked about here a few minutes ago. And then the last part, we'll take a look at the collaboration aspect, being able to collaborate, comment, mark up on designs. And again, through a typical scenario that we would encounter in the real world. And of course, as we go through the demo, we're not showing those in isolations. The pieces very closely intertwine in terms of the collaboration, the linking, and the planning. So with that, let's start the demo. We're going to start the demo with a look at traceability, and in this case specifically traceability from requirements through to work items, change management, and through to design. I'm logged in here to the change management application as Al, the solution architect, and Al's been assigned a work item from Bob, the product owner, and this work item, task 89, is to design allocating dividend service. And the description of the work item is to create a high-level design for planning purposes. So Bob wants to understand more about this fairly quickly so that he can incorporate it into the iteration plans. Now if we switch over here to the Links tab, Al can see that this work item has a parent allocating dividends with web service. It's related to or it implements a requirement 126, the service for allocating dividends. And if we click on that, we'll go right over to the requirement in RRC. And Al, reading through here, can see that this is a web service interface into allocating dividends. So let's go back to the work item. And we can also see that this work item is blocking another work item, 90, detail the design for allocating dividend service, which also is assigned to Al and is going to be a follow-on activity to this. So first we're going to do a high-level, very quick design to scope the work, and then do a more detailed design to lay out the details prior to implementation. So what Al is going to do is switch over to RSA Design Management application. So he's already created a business process model, a high-level one to show the flow of events. So he's just going to do a search for allocate dividends and BPM and hit enter. And it pops up the search results here. And what Al can do is just click on that. He wants to take a look and make sure this is the right one. So previously he had created this with Rational Software Architect, and he had then imported it into the design management application so that the rest of the team can actually see this model and also link to it. And that's what we're going to do right now, is set up the traceability links. Switching over to the Links tab, we were previously on the Diagram tab. We'll go to the Links tab. First thing he's going to do is set up an Implements link. The team has defined the Implements link type to be the one that links with work items in team concert. So this is going to be an OSLC link. First thing he needs to do is select the project that he's going to link to, and it's the JKE Banking Change Management Project. And it's going to be the task. And we'll browse for that task. And in this case, it was 89. So we know the number. We can just quickly enter that in here. Design allocating dividend service. Select OK. And click OK. And let's save that. Now, the other thing Al wants to do, the original work item was linked to a requirement, so Al is going to set up a traceability link back to that requirement as well. And this BPMN diagram is derived from that requirement. So in this case, the project area is JKE Banking Requirements, and we're going to browse for the requirement. And then again, it happened to be 126. We could either enter the number in directly or do a search. So actually, if we just did a service dividend, hit enter, we can see there was 2 matches there, and the 126 is the one we want to link to. Select that and click OK. And again, we'll save that. So now we've set up 2 OSLC links from the design out to, in one case, the work item. We can get the compact rendering for that work item 89 here. And similarly for the requirement, we can get compact rendering for that requirement 126. Now let's go back to that task 89 and let's refresh that. And what you can see now is that on task 89, there's another link been added, the elaborated by architectural element. So when we link the design to the work item, it automatically created the link back to the design. So now anybody that comes in and looks at design allocating dividend service work item can see it's linked to an architectural element, can get a compact rendering for that, showing some details, and even actually click show more and get a preview of the diagram itself.
In this next part of the demo, we're going to take a look at design incorporated into real-time planning. Got Bob now logged in here as the product owner, and he has a user story related to allocating the dividends with web service work. Now Bob, if we go over here to the Links tab, Bob has separated this into 3 child tasks. One for designing the allocation dividend service, and this is really meant to be a high-level, quick design. And the whole purpose of this is to come up with a design that the rest of the team can then use as input to the planning process in order to help scope the work, size some of the effort related to the service, and also to identify parts of the design and ultimately implementation that are potentially risky perhaps some of the integration points, and allow the team to plan for those first to address the risk up front. The other two children work items here, one of them is to do a more detailed design for allocating the dividend service, and then the other one, which would be a follow-on, is to implement the design for allocating dividend service. And of course, those are going to also be not only included in the plan, but as those are being executed upon and we learn more, can be used as input to further refining the plan and keeping the plan up to date, the notion of real-time planning. So let's take a look at the plan. If we go over here to the Sprint 2 plan, underneath Al, the solution architect, we can see he's got some portion of the allocate dividends with web service story. There we can see his design allocating dividend service as well as the detailed design for allocating dividend service. In the case of this demo, both are assigned to Sprint 2. In a real world scenario, it might be that the initial high-level design is incorporated into an earlier sprint, and then that the output of that initial high-level design is used as input to planning a subsequent sprint, which would then include the more detailed design for allocating dividend service. Also underneath Deb, we can see that she has another piece of this, and that's to actually implement the design for allocating the dividend service. If we switch over from the work breakdown over to the traceability view of the plan, and we go down and expand the allocating with dividend service, we can see the child work items showing up here, but in this case I've had to shrink to a lower resolution so they don't actually show up the full name. But if I hover over one, you can see the first one is that high-level design allocating dividend service work item that's assigned to Al, and we can see that it is associated with requirement 126 and elaborated by the architectural element allocate dividends to a cause. So all nicely with the traceability built into the plan here as well. Somebody looking at this plan can very easily start from that high-level user story and drill down to get more details and ultimately even see that high-level design linked over into design management.
Now in this last part of the demo, we're still Al, the solution architect. It's a little bit later on in the project, still in Sprint 2 though, and Al's been working away at task 90, which is the detailed design for allocating the dividend service. So here we can see the work item 90, and if we go over to the links tab again, we can see the traceability. This work item here is actually blocking work item 91, which is the implementation of the service, and if we hover over that, we can see that that work item has been assigned to Deb, but she of course is waiting for the design for the dividend service to be completed before she can do the implementation. We can also see that Al set up here a traceability link to the services interfaces overview diagram in RSA Design Management, and if we click on the show, we can even get a little preview of that right within the change management application. Now, Al's the solution architect, so he actually isn't using the browser for most of his things. He actually is going to be doing a lot of his work right within RSA, Rational Software Architect. So I'm going to switch over to Rational Software Architect here, and Al has the services interface overview diagram here as he's been working through the detailed design of this service. And one of the things Al wants to do is look at the comments related to this that have been made on the server. So again, I mentioned Al does all of his work generally within Rational Software Architect, and RSA is connected up to the Jazz Design Management server. And right within RSA, Al can click on and open the comments view, which pulls in all of the comments from the server that are related to the aspect of the model that he's working on right now. Now, Deb also asked a question around more on the deployment side, whether this service needs to be accessible from the internet or only from an internal network. So what Bob's going to do right from within RSA is just reply to that, saying that only from the internal network. VPN connections. No public internet access to the service is required. Now, Bob also, in conjunction with working on the services model, also created a logical and physical deployment topology, and he's going to direct Deb to see those. So Al's replied. Now, if we were to go right back and take a look in the work item for this, so let's click on the link here from the work item and link over to the actual model in design management. And you can see here that what Bob posted from within RSA is directly reflected through the web client. So the rest of the team that doesn't use RSA can comment and collaborate with Al through the web client, as opposed to Al, who was doing it through the RSA client. But one of the things Al realized was that he really should have linked both the physical and logical topology diagrams back to the work item that he was working on. So he's going to go over here inside of RSA and just open up the deployment model and open up the logical topology diagram. And down on the Properties tab, there's a CLM links. So right from within RSA, Al can set up those links. So he can select the link type, and this is going to be a link to a work item, so we're going to say implements, and of course select the project, which is JKE Banking Change Management, and choose an existing task. That populates the OSLC Delegated UI Selection dialog. And in this case, I believe it was 90, which is the detail. So he's going to link this logical deployment topology to work item 90. Now if we go back to the work item, and we can get to it because it's linked to right from this services interface, we can see that task 90 is now linked to both the services interfaces overview diagram as well as the logical topology.
Okay, thank you, Don, for that demonstration. You know, I've been a long-time rational expert in modeling and design and rational software architect, and it's really exciting for me to see these capabilities in action and to see our customers starting to use these and get a lot of value out of them. And it's exciting to see this as part of our application lifecycle management solution. You know, just to wrap up, our goal in this session was to give you a view into how evolved software teams use automated application lifecycle management to manage complexity with design management. So now we welcome your questions. Kimberly, will you get our Q&A session started?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cindy. And thank you very much, Don and Cindy. That was a great presentation. It was very informative, and we appreciate your time today. Just a reminder to everyone, in just a moment, you will see a survey pop up on your screen, and we ask that you help to shape the content of our future webcasts. We greatly value your opinion and look forward to hearing from you and what you have to say about today's presentation. So we do have a few questions, so why don't we jump right in. Don, the first one is for you. Are RSA's modeling capabilities included in the design management server?
Good question. No, the design management server is for the team aspect of software architecture and system design, right? So that includes the collaboration aspect, the lifecycle traceability aspect, as you saw in the demo, setting up design reviews. The actual authoring capability for software architectures and systems models is still done through the RSA desktop or the Rhapsody desktop. So your software architect or systems engineer would be using the desktop tool to author those, and then they go into the design management server for the broader collaboration aspect.
Okay, as a follow-up question, do I need to have RSA or Rhapsody installed to search, view, or comment on the models on JAS?
No, definitely not. And that, I think Cindy talked a little bit about earlier, is one of the key things that has hindered, I guess, collaboration, if you will, on software architecture. The fact that the models themselves are stored into a file and put into an SCM system someplace, and you really need the desktop tool, whether it be RSA, Rhapsody, or the whole modeling industry has really evolved around practitioner-focused desktop tools. And you need that tool to be able to view and access the models and the designs. Or you have to know somebody who can generate a document and email it to you. So the key benefit here is that those now become broadly accessible by anybody on the team through a web client. So it definitely opens up just visibility into those architectures and models, and lets other team members provide insight if it happens to be a subject matter expert, or benefit from having that architecture or model if in the case of obviously in the case of implementation with a developer, or from the test team being able to look at the architecture and focus test plans and test cases around using that additional knowledge.
Thanks, Don. Cindy, here's a question for you. If I have ClearCase and ClearQuest, should I consider implementing some of these CLM, CDM capabilities?
Thank you. That's another really good question. Of course, we encourage teams and organizations to move toward the integrated application lifecycle management solution. Usually an incremental approach is the right way to go with that. And so it takes assessment of how broad is your ClearCase and ClearQuest adoption, what tools are you currently integrating with, what extensions and customizations have you built, and exactly how are you using those tools. Based on that assessment, then you would look at the solutions in the ALM solution stack and the benefits that they will provide your organization, and start to look at ways that you can incrementally move toward gaining those values. So we do have integrations with ClearCase and ClearQuest into tools like Rational Team Concert. So yes, of course we encourage you to move in that direction. How you do that is going to be something that you'll need to assess, and we have folks skilled in helping assess and define a plan for incremental adoption. So I suggest that you reach out to your local Rational team for help and guidance and more discussion on the details of that. Thanks.
Another question for you, Cindy. Is a software architect the same as a system architect?
Thanks for another good question. Even internally to Rational, the fact that both of them have this acronym of RSA, it causes us some questions sometimes too. But the reality is that they're much different in their purpose and focus. So Rational Software Architect is targeted to solutions, say, in a particular application level, where you can model systems and then progress those into code, even with some of the built-in transformations, or you might reverse engineer the code from a specific system. And so we target it towards solution architectures at that level. Whereas system architect is something that we use in conjunction, say, with portfolio management and taking the 10,000-foot view across an enterprise so that we can look at a very high level at the business processes and the high-level business components, and what is the impact of a certain decision in our portfolio management and strategy. And system architect is very targeted towards that kind of usage. Now you might argue, well, gosh, I could do business process modeling in either tool. And yes, that's true. There is some overlap, and we understand that. But there's a clear distinction in where the tool's capabilities are focused. And again, it's a difference in software architect targeted toward the solution architecture level, and system architect targeted toward an enterprise architecture level. I hope that helps.
And just to add to something add to Cindy's reply there, in the end of last year, the end of 2011, System Architect came out with a release that added OSLC capabilities. So yes, our Rational Software Architect and System Architect are different tools targeted at different audiences, but you can still get the benefit of traceability now, so that you can have enterprise plans in System Architect linked through OSLC to solution level architectures in Rational Software Architect or Rhapsody.
Thanks, Don. Another question, where can I get more information and any suggestions on getting started?
I can take a first crack at that, and then Cindy can add in additional details. One of the best places to get started is out on jazz.net. That's where we do open commercial development for most of the offerings that we've talked about in this presentation. And it's a place where you can go out and, for one, get more information. There's a library section that has lots of great articles, blog posts, recorded videos, little short clips that you can use to learn more. There's a download section where you can download trials of any of the software from there and try it out, and that's, in my opinion, one of the best ways to get started. There's also, of course, a forum there where you can go out and ask questions if you have anything you want to specifically know about, and those forums are monitored by definitely the community of users as well as the development teams and the product managers. Another great place to learn more is the Innovate Conference that we have every year. Last year, it's in June every year. Last year, that's where we launched the Collaborative Design Management Initiative. And the upcoming conference is June 3rd to the 7th of this year, and there will be definitely lots of more information there. We have tracks for each of the various capabilities, as well as new this year we have a Lifecycle integrations track that's going to look at topics around combining the capabilities together, much like we've looked at in this presentation around the imperatives. The Innovate Conference is definitely a great place to learn more. There's lots of sessions from clients, from IBMers. You can interact with developers from the development team, product managers, and just learn how other clients are implementing and adopting the solutions.
Well, thank you, Don and Cindy. This has been great. I'd also like to invite our audience to remember that Innovate 2012 is coming up in Orlando, Florida this year, June 3rd through the 7th. Please feel free to check for registration and attend that conference. There will be more than enough information available on our website. This webcast will be available for replay in about 24 hours using the same URL. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today, Cindy VanEpps and Don Yantzi, for being with us for today's webcast, Conquer Complexity with Effective ALM and a Focus on Design. So on behalf of Cindy and Don, we'd like to thank you, our audience, for your interest in IBM. We hope to see you back for another one of our events in the very near future. My name is Kimberly Gist. I'm your moderator. Thank you very much.